All right. Well, hello and welcome to the fourth Digital Data Resource Show and Share. On behalf of Community Information Now, I'd like to thank our presenters today, Ginger Walker, the Senior Data Capability Specialist at Strive Together, also Vice Chair for Alamo Regional Data Alliance, Dr. Golare Aga, Chief of Informatics at San Antonio Metropolitan Health District, Jade Beebe, Senior Manager of Data Analytics at Up Partnership, and our very own Jeremy Pine, the Senior Program Manager at CI Now. Thanks to our hosts who helped us organize and get the word out, LISC San Antonio, Alamo Regional Data Alliance, our staff here at CI Now, and NNIP. My name is Daniqua Forrest, and I'm a research coordinator here at CI Now. Thank y'all for attending today's show and share. This was born out of a want for knowledge about current or upcoming local data resources. We want to help people find what they need and avoid duplication efforts and inform development of new data. This is hosted about 3 times a year. This is our fourth show and share, the second for this year. And today's tools include Opportunity Atlas, Policymap, out-of-school time data, and data on self-sufficiency standards. Some housekeeping items to get out of the way. We will have a quick evaluation poll while we set up for the Q&A after the presentations. Please place your questions in the chat and we will get to those later on. The recording will be available afterwards. And we ask that everyone refrain from accessing the data tools during the presenters' demos, as the increase of traffic on the sites may slow them down. And now with all that out of the way, the first part of our agenda today is Ginger Walker presenting Opportunity Atlas. Take it away, Ginger.
Good morning. So I'm excited to be here. I'm a data coach is my short title at Strive Together, and we're a network of collective impact organizations that includes Up Partnership here in San Antonio, but all over the country, folks that do what Up Partnership does around education and driving upward mobility. And so I am also a proud alum of Up Partnership. I worked at Up Partnership between 2014 and 18 as their data director. So excited to get to support partnerships like Up in my new role at Strive Together. And I also am very proud of working with the Alamo Regional Data Alliance. So that is one of our co-sponsors today. I'm the former vice chair. Actually, our new co-chair is on the call today, Sarah Surface. And so we've been excited about this opportunity to get the word out about data resources that exist, because our mission and vision is to build a culture of data-driven action to improve quality of life in San Antonio. That's something I'm super passionate about. And I think this tool that I'm going to share today is a great resource that I want more folks to know about and use, because I think it can really broker those cross-sector partnerships that are so essential to getting out of our silos and working together with other systems that impact youth. Education can't do it alone, housing can't do it alone, and together those systems really all contribute to something that's measured in the Opportunity Atlas, which is upward mobility. So I'll share a little bit of the motivation behind the development of this tool. Let me share my screen. So Opportunity Insights is the developer of this tool, and this is economist Raj Chetty's team at Harvard that is studying kind of the determinants of the American dream. So one of the things that they've seen in their research using census data, IRS records, huge data sets that go back many, many years, to be able to track one proxy for the American dream, so which is how likely are you to make more than your parents did? And so that was very likely for youth born in the 1940s, less likely today. You can see on the chart that for children born in 1985, it's no better than a coin toss, 50-50 whether we'll make more than our parents did. So using this as kind of a quantification of the American dream, Chetty and his team can study across neighborhoods where are the chances better for young people growing up in those neighborhoods to rise out of poverty. And so that is what Opportunity Insights is all about. They have a lot of amazing tools and research coming out of that. So definitely one to keep your eye on. And if we have time at the end, I'll kind of tease a few other products that they offer, but Opportunity Atlas is what we'll look at today. And so we can dive into our own neighborhoods to see what opportunity or upward mobility looks like. This is a bit of a, what I think is a good illustration of the concept of the American dream, like rags to riches. So the data here from Opportunity Insights shows the, in the deepest red are places where it's less likely that someone can go from rags to riches. And the places like San Jose and Salt Lake City is where it's more likely. But we'll zoom into Bexar County. So let me actually take you through the tool itself. So you just go to opportunityatlas.org. And it guides you through how to get to the data you're looking for. So there's quite a bit in here, but you start with a question like, how much do kids who grew up in where I did earn on average? So we're gonna pick a place, an outcome, and a population. And essentially it starts out kind of pre-configured for household income at age 35 for people, children who grew up in that area. There's so much great research about why, about how impactful neighborhood is on this upward mobility indicator. And it's not just like a city overall. Raj Chetty's research really shows that it's the characteristics of your neighborhood no more than half a mile from where you grew up that is impacting your chances of upward mobility. And it's and it also matters how many years of your youth you spent in that place. So for children who move from an area that has low upward mobility to an area with high upward mobility, their income in adulthood is higher based on the number of years they spent in the high upward mobility neighborhood. So it's with all of this information and the variation between communities, the opportunity here is to study what are the factors that make a place a high or low upward mobility area, and how can we use that to increase opportunity in neighborhoods. So before I zoom in on Bexar County, let me share kind of the top 5 correlates of upward mobility that Raj Chetty and his team have found. So one, and I'm combining these two, but how race and income segregation. So they're a mixed population by race and income in the neighborhood. And if there is, that tends to be a higher upward mobility area. Schools are well researched. The rest of these are correlates at this point, but schools are well researched and causal. That good schools and education leads to higher upward mobility. The other two are family structure. So whether there are single parent households in the community, and it's not necessarily just impacting the youth who grow up in single parent households, it's the community. And then the 5th one is the social capital. So social capital is measured in lots of different ways, but essentially it's trying to get at this idea that If you need help, your neighbor or your family or your church congregate or your bowling buddy will help you. And so in fact, they've even used number of churches and number of bowling alleys as a proxy for this. You can't bowl alone. It's by definition a social sport. So, and this is one of the determinants of upward mobility in a neighborhood. There are, I'm really excited about new research that Raj Chetty is working on, where he's actually going to be able to use social media data to try to measure this social capital as well. So with those 5 correlates, it just becomes so clear that we can't work on education alone and see upward mobility change, that we really have to work with communities and with neighborhoods because they are such a driver in this outcome. So with that, I'll zoom in a little bit on Bexar County. Of course, we want to see what does it look like for us. And within Bexar County, we're kind of preset here now to looking at low income, youth who grew up in low income households in Bexar County of all races and all genders. And we're looking at their incomes in adulthood. So their incomes are higher in adulthood if they grew up on the far north side, and lower in adulthood if they grew up on the east side. And so, you know, I look at my neighborhood in Riverside, and I think it's like 29,000 for students or for youth who grew up in low income neighborhoods, that they earn in adulthood their household income. But we're looking at some of the darkest red parts of the east side, that's 23,000, 22,000. And then of course, when we're talking about the areas where low income youth have gone on to make more in adulthood, that would be up to 51, 62,000 in some of these census tracts. So what's interesting to me is that in a single city, you can't say, oh, Bexar County overall has this impact on upward mobility, that even in our county, all of this variation exists, census tract by census tract. So it makes me think we really need to be super targeted in our work if we want to see these trajectories change overall. So one of the things that's really important to disaggregate for is race, because you know, it masks quite a bit of variation in our community, even at the census tract level. So we'll just pick this low upward mobility census tract, 22,000 expected to earn in adulthood for youth who grew up here. But if we zoom in on Black males in that neighborhood, they're expected to earn even less, on average, 19,000. So it's, you know, gender and ethnicity, especially for Black males, is a huge factor here. And Raj Chetty's research has lots of great supporting data on the factors that influence that. It's not skill, it's not family education, it's some of the things that he saw that made the differences. And by the way, 99% of census tracts in America have lower incomes for Black males than for white males. And he's seeing this, that some of the census tracts with the smallest gaps are places where they've been able to look at white bias and the presence of fathers in Black households too. So there's lots of great digging they're doing into this race issue. And I think one of the things I want to highlight here is that we're not talking about individuals who, we're not talking about individual choice here. We're talking about the characteristics of a neighborhood and the systems that impact individuals and impact their opportunities for upward mobility. So yeah, a youth that grows up in this neighborhood doesn't have a choice about where they live, what schools they have access to, and the characteristics of their neighborhood. So it's up to us to think about the systems that impact individuals in these places. So let me take you back to a few more opportunities to learn more. And there's so much more data in here. So you can look at this outcome, which is the household income at age 35, but there's many more things looking at. Incarceration rates across Bexar County. I thought was interesting, the staying in the same commuting zone as adults, like where are people staying in adulthood versus moving away. And this is really an opportunity to build generational upward mobility. And then of course you can look at like the rags to riches, the bottom to the top. How are they going from the bottom 20% to the top 20%? So there's so much great stuff in here, and I want to do a quick time check. How much time do I have left? Here's a couple of links to learn more, which I will drop in the chat. But there's the Opportunity Atlas that we just looked at, Opportunity Insights, which is the data shop that puts out all of these great resources and research. And there's much more in there to cover. There's even, if you want to go deep with this, there's a 5-hour free GovX course that you can take just on how to use the Opportunity Atlas. You don't need to go that deep with it right out front, but it can give you some great ideas about how to use it. So a few examples of how I've seen it used. When I worked at Goodwill, we used it in site analysis. So we wanted to make sure that our locations were in places with the greatest need, and because we wanted to, we were targeting workforce development. So we saw upward mobility as part of our impact on an area. And I think another way that this can be used is when we were looking at how to partner cross-sector with between education and housing, for example. It was helpful to anchor our work in a common goal, and that upward mobility measure is something that SAHA aligns its work to, Goodwill aligns its work to, a partnership aligns its work to, because all of these systems all ultimately impact upward mobility. And so it became a really key indicator to collaborate with other sectors on and say, for example, the SAHA and SAISD task force that got together to look at students from low-income housing and how they could support school attendance. And so they were targeting policies at SAISD that would make it easier for for mobile students, as in like moving from one neighborhood to another, mobile students to stay in their current school. So these kinds of conversations and partnerships really come from organizations seeing their goals as aligned, and upward mobility can be a great language to use for that. So I will, anybody know if I'm over time yet? Because I'll keep going.
Also 9:55, you're about right at time.
Yep,
Okay.
you are.
Great. Well, thank you guys. And there's, you'll find many more resources on opportunityinsights.org. But I hope this gets you interested and started.
Definitely. Thank you so much, Ginger. Just a reminder to everyone to please place your questions in the chat for them to be answered. And next up, we have Dr. Golare Aga presenting Policymap.
Hi, everyone. Can y'all hear me well? Excellent. It's great to be here, guys. I am Golare Aga, Chief of Informatics at Metro Health. We deal with everything and anything related to data analytics, programming, chronic disease epidemiology, and boy, do we map things. So today I am going to do a little bit of a demo walkthrough on Policymap, and almost sort of like give, those YouTube reviews of you see that off a site of like the features and, what you think it could improve. I feel like I'm going to do that as well. So I'm going to share my screen and pull up Google. So please let me know if you can't see that I've pulled up the Google search engine. All right, all is good. And my camera is off because I have this weird fancy setup with a docking station, and it confuses me when I open my laptop and the screens. So here we are. We can Google Policymap and go on the site. Now, what I discovered recently, because it had been a while since I'd been on this site, is that they have a new beta version versus their legacy version. So it can be a little bit confusing to sort of straddle both. So I think that I really like the new beta version. And because that's going to be the one, I'm going to focus on that. So for those of you who do use Policymap, and, change is hard, right? I hate it when like census changed everything. All of a sudden I have to figure out a new thing. But I think it's good to walk through a demo and even almost explore it together, sort of in these sort of data walkthroughs, which is such a great opportunity to do these kind of things. So when you go on the policy site, you click on Open Map, and it gives you a little bit of an intro. Please know this is the beta version. Some things are not necessarily available yet. If you really are attached to your legacy, please go back there, et cetera, et cetera. And of course, you can, sign up for a newsletter to get information. So I press OK. What's really cool about Policymap is I like this little notification that it has on the side, where it talks about sort of the latest developments on common public sources of data. So I find that quite interesting. But for now, I'm going to close that. So I thought I would start with some simple examples of different things that you could need to walk through. So first, when you sign on to the site, it has this, big map feature, and it has all of the, different categories of topics related to, health and socioeconomic indicators up at the top. So we can sort of approach it in different ways. There's also the COVID-19 maps, which I'll touch on after I do sort of the general demo here. So let's say, for example, that you come on this site and you're really just interested in learning about one thing, and you don't feel like you figuring it out by going through all the indicators. So we've been working a lot on displacement. So let's say I'm interested in, rent. The search engine is pretty amazing, particularly because it gives the source of the data right there. And it also walks you through what categories and subcategories the thing that you will click on will get you. So for example, rent, we have census data, which gives us percent of households that rent a home. And it's telling me that this is under housing, rent and rental units, number of units, all units. So for example, let's click on that. And, this is what it shows for the entire US. And on this little side here, it takes a little to figure out, but, each component is very meaningful. So it's telling you that right now the data is at the county level. And 2010 just basically means like it's the boundaries for a county that were created in 2010. It gives you the name of the variable, the source, any information. You can click on the I and it gives you the full description. But what I really like is it also takes you, if you click on the source, it takes you to their dictionary, right to the point of where the variable you were looking at is. So it gives you the topic, the source, any other information, and the original link for the source of data where it's from. So I think this is really great because you can read as much as you want about a particular topic or variable that you're interested in. And that sort of comes up as a new pop-up window. So that's great. And then obviously I'm not interested in all of the US. I'm interested in, let's say, where I work and live. So what I really love is, it's called the scale dependency. As you zoom in, the unit here changes. You'll see that right now, this changed to zip code tabulation, and each of these are a zip code. And of course, if you hover over them, it'll give you the zip code and the percentage. If we go in even further, then it switches to census tract level. And obviously this is great because it means that we have data at the census tract level. One thing I have not been able to figure out is right off the bat, when you search for something, until you go through this exercise, you don't know all the levels of geography that this variable will be available in, because some things are only going to be available at the county level, but some things, because I know for a fact that census data has census tract level, I'll know that by zooming in, I get that. So it's sort of like an exercise in doing things, but I welcome in the chat if any of you are avid users and feel like I've missed something. So basically here it is. It's pretty great. You hover, if you click on it. Oh, so here's another thing. You'll need to log in and subscribe for a lot of the features. So they have like the paid models. I'm a little bit, I'm not an expert in that. I'm not sure if any of you use the paid models of Policymap, but some things I find that it'll be hard to do. And I'll show you more examples of that. So carrying through this example, basically, this is the kind of data that we have. So let's say I want it to draw a boundary around the place that I'm interested in. So at the top for location, I put Bexar County, and it puts a nice little orange square around it. Now, I was really interested in this clip feature, but again, I think you need to log in or subscribe. If somebody is an expert as to whether you can log in without paying money, then that would be a really good option to just log in and have like an account under Policymap. So I'll leave that for the discussion. But basically, here is my outline. I would be really interested in, downloading this. Again, this will be available. It's just not available yet. It says because it's the beta version. And then there's like a report function, which basically puts it, I think, into a report. So that's pretty cool. I can close it by clicking on the X here, and then that goes away. So it's not zooming in on the area anymore. So that's one example of what you can do. So let's say I come on the site, and again, this is the testament to the great search feature. I'm interested in food deserts, right? I don't know what the official name is or what the data source is, but I put in food deserts. Did I spell that right? Yeah. Okay. And so it automatically knows what I'm talking about, even though that's not the name of the variable. It will bring up USDA data. There's lots of sources of data on Policymap. There's census, there's HUD, there's USDA, there's CDC. So this is something that, I can look at. So I click on that and it stays on the zoomed in place that I have. So that's nice. And it'll give me sort of the information there. It can already show you that the data is at the census tract level. So, when you click on a census, so that's interesting. This is a little different than the last one was. The actual census tract level data, I guess it's because it's a different variable, right? So this just means that anything purple is low income and low access, and anything yellow is not low income and low access. And that's all there is to it. So this is sort of an example of which census tracts are low income and low access in Bexar County. And again, the scale dependency. So this is another interesting point I wanted to make. This data source, I know for a fact from USDA, is only available as a census tract level. So when you zoom out, it still stays at the census tract level, as you could see. So it's interesting because you'll have to either have, some prior knowledge, or maybe click on, the little library thing where you can learn about the variable. And yeah, as you see, it says geography census tract. So clearly when you click on the source of the data, it'll tell you, what's available. So that's the second example that I have. Another example that we've been thinking a lot about is, so let's say I clear this and now I get back. I'm interested in business data, like business and sales. And What's going to be interesting is it'll give you some options that are grayed out, meaning some data sets, it seems, is only available if you are logged in or have the subscription version. So I guess this is important to think about when you think of access and whether there's any unique data sets that are not, routinely available, like the easy stuff, like the census stuff. That's something that you would have to consider. But let's click on this SBA data sort of small business development centers. So this is point data. It's pretty cool. It'll give you the location of all small business development centers from this source of data. And again, let's zoom in to San Antonio. And if you click on it, it'll say there are 5 data points, and then it'll give you the location and the names of each one. So great. If you click on one, it'll give you all the information, the address, the info, and you have the download option once the beta version is complete. So that's pretty cool. That's point data that we like to call geolocation data. And that's, something that you can easily see. You can zoom out and see, which, like states have a more concentrated amount of small business development centers. So that's the example when you use business data. Somebody definitely let me know if I'm good for time because I have not been tracking it.
Good. You have about another 4 minutes.
Oh, wow. Okay. This time goes by fast. Okay. So that's on the beta version. I really do want to click quickly on, okay. And here's another thing that's really important. See this single layer, multi-layer. You can think about layering data, right? Or when you, like Ginger said, we're always interested in disaggregating data by a second variable, but what does that mean when we're trying to map something? It gets a little bit more complicated. So I'm going to click on their dedicated COVID-19 maps. I'm going to try to do this quickly. And when you click on it, it's interesting because this is such a hot topic. They'll almost have curated stories that you can discover alongside a map with you when you look at something. So let's click on, let's see, which one do y'all think is good? This one's super complicated. I'm going to stay away from that. Where are populations vulnerable to COVID-19? So I'll say explore the map. And it says this story that it's telling us is centered around Philadelphia. So recenter, sure. Okay, and then it puts up a little story. And this is nice because it gives you an example of how this layered data is being used. So, the question is, where are populations vulnerable? The answer is in Philadelphia. There are areas in the map in purple are places where people are more likely to be vulnerable to COVID-19. By layering lower median household income and higher rates of diabetes, we identify areas that are in need for public health interventions. Okay, so that's great. You see that the little side panel has changed. There's 2 variables now, and it's not complicated, but it's a little complicated at first sight. So basically, this little side panel has 2 variables, right? The first one is estimated median income, and you could see that the level is census tract. And basically, this little lever thingy tells us where to set, the upper threshold. So right now, it's set at anything from $22,499 to $75,000, and anything in purple falls into that category. But that's not it. What's important for these layered maps to understand is that the purple, any census tract that shows up as purple, is one that meets the criteria for both the top variable and the bottom variable. So let's say I care about low income. So like they say, I put it on 35,000 or 35,000. But then for this, where are the places where there are estimated percent of adults diagnosed with diabetes from the CDC data is this one is showing 10% or more. So it's set at the 10% mark. So it's showing 10% or more. What if I'm interested in census tracts that have a much higher rate than 10%? So I basically move the lever to 15%. Obviously, that's a more specific criteria. So the number of census tracts that fall into the purple area decrease. So this is sort of an example of when you layer data and you have 2 different categories that sort of fall into that. There's another one that was, we could look at where are COVID-19 surging. okay, this quick map is specific to another location. If we recenter, it's all of the US. So it's basically telling us the story again. The darkest purple areas on the map are where the places where the number of COVID cases have risen. And then you can also start thinking about adding your own layers. So, okay, so the first layer showed where are COVID-19 cases surging, and we can think about adding another layer. So if we go, where are, let's say, deaths also surging? So I'm rushing through this example, but it's basically an exercise of you exploring data by thinking what factors and categories could go together. So here are two layers again, because I added deaths, and the first one shows all the places where the percent change in cases of COVID-19 between July 11 and 18 was a certain amount. So I'm interested in where it was 15% or more. Oh, not that many. So I basically relax the criteria, right? And then I can also zoom in and see whether, and again, the COVID-19 data is only available at the county level, which for us local people, you know, we collect our own data at the zip code level. It's a little bit, you know, not, so let's just go back to, you know, this means that in San Antonio, it really did meet the criteria for, you know, even 2.5% or higher. But anyway, the point is you can adjust the levers, and whatever meets the criteria of both the top variable and the bottom variable is what stays purple. It's a little bit hard to figure out these adding layers on the COVID maps. I feel like that was a little bit more or less developed because a lot of the data is available at the county level. And so you're trying to make sense of what it means to add layers and what it means when you change the levers and the colors for the entire county go away, if that makes sense. So that's why I thought it would, you know, be a lot less time, but that's a little demo of Policymap. I think the multiple layer thing is something that people would explore a little bit more and play around with. And for the main site, it seems that that's available only if you log in. But for this COVID site, because it's such a hot topic and such a high demand, and a lot of other data sources are making it freely available, they've made it available as well. So you can explore that there. So that's my little review. I give it 4 out of 5.
Thank you so much, Dr. Aga, for walking us through that. Next up, we have Jade Beebe presenting on out-of-school time data.
Thank you. Good morning, everybody. Thank you for joining us. I'm going to do, I'll start sharing my screen, and I wanted to just do a quick little introduction of who UP is and our data department and what sort of stuff we create, and then I'll straight to our college success dashboard. So this is our data department. UP Partnership itself is a collective impact organization. We work with youth serving community partners to ensure that all young people are ready for the future in San Antonio and Bexar County. We were fortunate enough to be able to rapidly expand out our data department since 2020. We started out this time last year with 2 people, and now we have 5. So we've been able to really increase the types of products that we offer, which consist of surveys, survey summaries, dashboards and scorecards, data collection guides, technical guides, and logic models. Let me go over to that slide real quick. And then additionally, the data department supports the coordination of data sharing agreements between public school districts, institutions of higher education, and community-based organizations to get student-level data, so then we can start to map how students are doing in the classroom and outside of the classroom. Some of the people that use our data, by using data as a foundation for our work, we seek to show that for our young people in Bexar County, the systems must change. The data shows that our systems are not equitable in Bexar County, especially for Black and Latinx communities. So we believe in using data to inform our partners in the community to compel this action to change these systems so all young people can be ready for the future. And then lastly, What types of data do we collect? There are 4 primary data sources that we use for all of our public and private dashboards, and we build all of those in Tableau. We use TEA and THECB data, and then we also have data sharing agreements between 6 ISDs, 3 institutions of higher education, and 11 community-based organizations. And then we also use census data. So to the dashboard. So this is a dashboard that we have on our website right now. And making sure that all young people succeed is our entire community's responsibility. And our College Success Dashboard shows us how Bexar County high school students are doing in regard to post-secondary readiness, access, and attainment. This dashboard can be found on our website, and it is updated annually with public third-party data from the TEA and THECB. So I'm going to pull it up on our website. So this is what, can you guys see this okay? Okay. I have to get it down. So this is what it looks like. It's gonna, when you go to uppartnership.org and you go to data resources, if you scroll down a little bit, it is the first dashboard that you will see. And it's divided up into 3 parts. You have readiness dashboard, and access dashboard, and attainment dashboard. So what we're looking at right now is the access. Let's go over to readiness. So here you'll be able to see the percentage of senior class that graduated high school and the percentage of graduating senior class that is graduating college ready. These are both data points available through the TEA's website, their Texas Academic Performance Report, the TAPER. And you can filter by school year, and you can also select a region. Something that we added for this year's iteration is we added a state and region 20 comparison line on the top. And when that information is available, we add it. So it's not, it wasn't available for all of the different data points across all of the different things that we have on this dashboard, but when we were able to get it, we would add it to that visual. So when you hover over it, you can see the location, the student group, school year, and then you can also see the actual percentage as well for that element. And then you can also come over here and you can hover over these donut charts and see the same types of information. So if we go over to the access dashboard, here it's a combination of TEA data, and then down here, this is THECB data. This is not updated at the same rate. Their data through the THECB website is not updated at the same rate that the TEA updates theirs. So when there's instances like that, which we see quite often with higher ed data, all the filters won't work. So on this dashboard, the reporting year is only specific to this top visual. This information for the post-secondary enrollment is for the last graduating class that they had available publicly was for the class of 2007. So, or 2017, I'm sorry. So that's what you'll see in the tooltip when you hover over is it'll say the percentage of the 2017 senior class. Here, you'll be able to filter for the reporting year. And the importance of that, instead of it saying school year, is that it can be a little bit misleading because school year is actually indicating like the graduating class. So for 2019 to 2020, this is actually the senior class of 2017 to 2018. So they graduated in the spring of 2018. So it's kind of hard to explain that in the filter titles without it becoming overly complicated. So the thing to remember is that this is for the TAPER reporting year. The 2019-2020 report, which is currently what's the latest that's available through the TEA, that is what you're looking at, is the graduating class within that report. And again, you can filter by location. And then we'll go over to attainment. Maybe, how am I doing on time? Okay. I think I'm doing okay.
We'll go to like 10:28 for you.
Oh, okay. I think I'm probably talking really fast. I had quite a bit of coffee, so I may not even need it, but if I do, that's good to know. So the last view on this dashboard is a combination of TEA and THECB data again. You can see the percentage of graduating class. Now this is actually looking at the percentage of the 2012 graduating class because this is, again, THECB data, and that is the latest that they have available. And you can filter, and some of the filters, again, will work on here and some of them will not. This is looking at TEA data, and it will also populate information over here based off of the filters that you apply. So, and we only have 2 years of data for this one. And that's mainly because, again, the THECB data, when they update their dashboard, they don't have historical references, they just update it. So you can't go back and pull it later. So we only have 2 years of data because we have the data that we had put in previous dashboards. So now that we know that, we started our own sort of like data management protocol that actually just keeps all of that historic stuff. Okay, so let's go to the 2018-2019 and say we want to look at four-year institutions for Alamo Heights. So then you'll be able to see here how they're doing in the different types of higher ed institutions that we have. And then if we wanted to look at student groups, and this filter is going to apply for down here. Let's say we want to look at how the Asian students are doing within four-year institutions. So this is more or less reiterating some of the stuff that you'll see over here, but we found that some of our users found this helpful when they were presenting information within their work groups. They could just see it as like a snapshot, and it was something that they could either screenshot, or it helped them just kind of have this sort of conversation talking points. So that's sort of, this is an element that we're starting to add in more of our sort of public visuals to help community work groups and task force be able to use these and facilitate through them in meetings. So that is pretty much it. Another element for this is if you decide that you want to be able to save this, you can share it through here. You can get a link to be able to share. You can also embed it if you wanted to embed it in, like if you have a community work group site, or you can also download. We've made that available as any of the download options. A lot of people download it for PowerPoints. So it basically will just take screenshots of the different views within the dashboard. So it'll give you all three of the different sub dashboards that we have, and just put it in an easy to use PowerPoint form for you. It's not going to be interactive at that point, but it's a good way to just kind of have, I don't know, if you just wanted to have static copies to be able to print out and share with people. So I think I talked through that a lot faster than I initially had planned. Another last thought that I have on this though is that as I mentioned before, we update this annually, typically in the spring, because the TEA releases their new data at the end of December, usually beginning of January, and they release their advanced data downloads. And so that's what we use for this, because we need to have the gender and race information that is not easily accessible for all these different locations and school years, just through their normal reports that they generate. And then the THECB data, we're still trying to figure out what their sort of schedule of updates is. I was looking again last night, and I think they may have released some stuff, so we'll probably be taking a look at it again over the next couple of weeks, and we may be able to update some of the higher ed data. But for the last couple of years, we haven't really seen anything. So, but it looks like they have been able to push out some more stuff now. So we'll be probably doing another refresh over the fall. Okay, so does anyone have, we're doing questions at the end, right?
Yes, we'll do questions
Okay.
at the end. Thank you so much, Jade.
Yeah, no problem.
Sorry.
No, I'm going to stop sharing now. Thank you.
You're welcome. Last but not least, we have Jeremy Pine presenting data on self-sufficiency standards.
Thank you. Also, before I start, if there's any questions, please put them in the chat and we'll read them in the end. I know Ginger has to take off before the Q&A, so if you have any questions from the first presentation, she mentioned that she will answer them in the chat. So if you have questions on that first one, please put them in. And then at the end, we will also be reading any of the answers that came through the chat so that we make sure that makes it on recording. And so when we publish it, that we have those questions answered. So I'm here to present on a data set. It's a little bit different than doing the interactive mapping. So first of all, I'm the Senior Program Manager for Community Information now. And I'm here to talk about the Center for Women's Welfare Self-Sufficiency Standard data set. let me see. And oh yeah, my screen sharing is working. Great. Okay. So just a quick go through what I'll go through and talk today about is first I just want to do a quick overview of the data source itself at the Center for Women's Welfare for people that may not have used this data set before, or this is the first time they're seeing it, just to know where it's coming from. And then we'll do a quick overview of the data set itself. Again, this isn't really an interactive site, but it is a data set you can go and download. And I haven't really seen it used a ton around here yet. So, and they have a fresh data set that just came out. So I think it's a good time to present it and just show what information is available through this, which is looks like it's a pretty powerful set of data that can be used. I'll go through some examples of how it's been used across the country. This is a data set that is nationwide. And so there are plenty of examples out there of reports that have used it and a couple of tools. So I'll go through a couple of those. And then just as a bonus at the end, because it is Census 2020 data came out a couple of weeks ago, and there is a tool there. At the very end with just a couple of minutes, I just want to show a tool that we came across last week that is taking a lot of that data that just came out and making it so you can do some comparisons. So I'll show that at the end. So first, for the Center for Women's Welfare, CWW, it is out of the University of Washington School of Social Work. It was founded back in 2002, where the primary mission for CWW is to serve as a resource and research center to support the continued development and refinement of the self-sufficiency standard. So really that CWW was founded for this data set and any related research tools and products that come out of it. Its founder emerita is Dr. Diana Pierce out of the University of Michigan. And Dr. Pierce developed it back in 1992. And then in 1996, it was commissioned by the state of Iowa to do it statewide, to take her research and do that for the entire state. Today, that's been expanded out to 41 states, including the District of Columbia. For the state of Texas, the 2 years that are available, downloadable, machine readable Excel data is for 2018 and 2021. So those are pretty up to date, well, very up to date with 2021, but also it comes out relatively frequently within 3 years. So I don't know if we can expect that to keep coming out in that same time frame, but that is at least looking good for having updates at least every few years. This is so the self-sufficiency standard data set is a budget-based living wage measure. And so what that means is that it's defining the real cost of living for working families, right? So it's really taking the amount of income that's necessary to meet basic needs, including taxes, which we don't normally get data that does it at that level. And then what it doesn't include are things like public subsidies, private informal assistance, getting any sort of income through your like friends, networks, those types of things. So the thing that makes this interesting is that it does it for a lot of different family types. In fact, over 700 different family types. It breaks it down from one adult with no children in the household to 3 adults, 6 teenagers. I think it goes all the way up to like 10 plus adults in the household. So it does a lot of different breakdowns for it, which I'll show you. And then it's used by a lot of different community organizations, academic researchers, policy institutes across the country. There's plenty of examples of people that have been using this data set for within those areas. So what this is it was developed as an alternative to the official poverty measure, right? The way that we normally look at the poverty threshold for the county, how many people are below poverty or above poverty or within a ratio of that poverty level, which is really built out of the USDA and food budgets for households for adults and children, right? That's the main thing that drives that. So what makes the self-sufficiency standard a better measure is that it varies by a number of different things, but mainly it varies by the age of children, which can make a big difference in how much household income you need, and also by place, right? So how much is the cost of living where you are? And so that's they take all that into account, which isn't taken into account with the official poverty measure. So self-sufficiency standard is based on food, housing, childcare, healthcare, transportation taxes, and miscellaneous costs. It uses those recent local and regional costs of each of those basic needs. So that gives you that regional variation across the country. It reflects modern family practices, so it assumes that all adults in the household work full time. It includes net effect of federal and state taxes, tax credits, local taxes, and local tax credits. So all of those are taken into account and broken apart. for each county, and also allows for realistic measurement of income requirements for over 700 different family types across the country. So I'll go ahead and do it's kind of a live demo. It's not really a demo of the site. I'll show the site, but it's really just a way to get the data into an Excel format. So we'll be looking at Excel mostly for this demo. But they also have, so it's at self-sufficiency-standard.org. They also have a methodology there that's pretty good to show how they how they do their calculations for each one of the costs that they break down. So I've included that in the include that link in here as well, but you can find it easily on their site as well. So let's go to their site really quick. It's at self-sufficiency-standard.org. Takes you into the site, gives you some just really quick information, and then really the only interactive part is the site to select here of the state. So you can select any state in the country. When we select Texas, it opens up the page. There's a 1996 PDF report. I think most states have that from when they first put it out. And since then, 2 data sets, they've started doing more with putting out Excels now. So 2018 and 2021, it varies by state on what years are available, depending on which state you select. So for Texas, these are the 2 years that they have. So if you click on these, it downloads the Excel. I've already done that because it does take a little bit of time. It is a pretty large data set. So I've already done that. So let me bring that up here. Oh, I guess I should also mention a lot of the stuff you'll see with the examples and stuff are coming out of here. So they have standard and practice to show what areas that's been used in, some media and that kind of stuff. So let's go ahead and look at the data set here real quick. And so when we go into the Excel that gets downloaded from clicking on that link, first it has a number of tabs here at the bottom. First is just a quick note to tell you about what each one of these tabs are. The basic takeaway from this is that all these tabs have the exact same data in it. They're just displayed differently depending on which tab you want to use. So they might, depending on the user, it depends which tab you would go into for here. So in the by county tab, it is breaking apart by county. Each row, right, it is by, here's Bell County, Texas. I went and highlighted Bexar County for our purposes today here. And so in Bexar County, what it does is it's doing, first of all, up here on the top is all the different family types, right? So one adult, one infant, one adult, one infant, one preschooler, right? And as we go to the right, that just keeps getting bigger and bigger until we start getting into, right, 2 adults, 3 adults, and then the same breakdown, right? 2 adults, no children, 2 adults, 1 infant. So 700 of the, more than 700, I think it's almost 720 as you go to the right, different ways to break down households. And so then below it for each one of these, it's telling us what the monthly costs are for those households, right? So for an adult with no children, $907 for housing here in Bexar County. Right, food $234, $0 in childcare. As you get up to adult, 1 infant, $795 for childcare, right? And that obviously goes up as you're getting more children. Transportation, healthcare, miscellaneous, and then it does how much you earn taxes, and then your earned income tax credit, childcare tax credit, child tax credit, right? So it takes all those things into account. And then the self-sufficiency wage here at the bottom, then this, how much would you need to make hourly, depending on how our household setup is, and how much would you make monthly and annually, and then also figures in an emergency savings fund for a monthly contribution for savings, right? And so takes all that data and breaks it down into a lot of different ways. So across the different tabs here, it's really, if we go by family, it does it more in a database sort of setup that you could, if you're using like any sort of statistical software or loading it and you were doing it in more that fashion, it does it in a more of a standardized set like this. And does some coding with family types. So it's this A1 is adult 1, infant 1, preschooler 1, school children 0, teenagers 0, right? And so just kind of puts it in a different format, but then gives you the exact same data that we just saw, just in a different format here, and then shows us our self-sufficiency standards. So just different ways to break that. These last 2 are more in I guess a typical Excel format where it's doing each county, and then the SSS is for salary. So that's giving us the numbers for the yearly And then the SSW is for wage for hourly, what you would need to be self-sufficient, right? So just a few different ways to show that. So there's a couple of, well, there's one tool I want to show, although on their site, if you go into that standards and practice, they have a lot of different tools in there. A lot of them are calculators for specific areas. There isn't one that is on there for Texas yet. But the one I want to show is out of Washington State, which I thought was pretty good. That you put in some information, it gives you a personal report, and then it connects you to local resources, which I think is really nice. Also, somehow they were able to get thecalculator.org, which I think is amazing. I don't know how long they've been around, but apparently they were able to jump on that one before anybody else got the calculator. So let's go ahead and take a look at that one. So this is the self-sufficiency calculator for Washington State. And what it does is it takes you through a set of steps, and it uses that self-sufficient data in the background to then personalize a report for you. So it has you put in your name, and then which county you're living in, the age of each member in your household, including yourself. So right, one, and I put in two ages here, and then that updates this, right? Since there's 2 ages entered in here, 2 people. And we click next, and then it uses that to then pick out the household type or the family type from that data set itself. So then it has you put in some information about your income, if you're paid by hour, day, week, month, twice a month, once a month, how much you're paid. In this case, you put in your wage, how many hours a week, information for unearned income. Then you enter in your expenses next, how much you pay in housing, how much do you pay in utilities, childcare, healthcare, food, transportation, miscellaneous. And again, this is all to build up a report for you. And then in the review, it goes through and you review, right, the things that you've now entered, in which then you can go to move on to full report, right? And then it gives you information about yourself and then the self-sufficiency standard wage on the right. So it does a comparison to where you are according to the area that you're in, according to the county that you entered, right? And where you kind of stand on your self-sufficiency information. So the other thing that it does, which I really like, is that it does this work supports, where you can explore work supports. And if you're interested in seeing whether you're eligible for resources that can help reduce your expenses, right? So this is a way to go in and have access to those resources as well, based on the information that you've entered. So very cool. There's a number of reports also on that site. So just some of the example calculations, comparison to wage, which I'll show an example of each one of these, but comparison to wage, percent of households below the self-sufficiency standard, which is a little bit more of a in-depth way of looking at that information you'll see, and then also as a percent of the federal poverty level. So on this first one, we're looking at the wages compared to self-sufficiency standard. This was a report out of Washington looking at international airport wages, minimum wages, and how it compares to the self-sufficiency standard for one adult, one preschool age child, and then what the percentage of self-sufficiency standard met by the minimum wages, right? And so a pretty simple and quick way to pull those minimum wages, compare it to what the self-sufficiency standard is for a specific household, and then see what that difference is here, or that percentage is here at the end. A little bit more here is looking at the characteristics of households that fall below that standard. So this one, this is for Inland Empire area of California. I found this in their report, where the percentage of people that are living below self-sufficiency standards, what do those households look like by race, ethnicity of householder, by the nativity of householder, right, by household type. So 44% married couple with children fall in this category, no children, 28%, educational attainment of the householder, right? So what they're doing here is they're taking ACS data and matching it up with, specifically they're taking public use microdata sample data, matching that up with a self-sufficiency standard household, and then getting a percentage to see how many fall below it, and then using the characteristics of those households to then prepare this information to put in the report. I thought that was pretty cool. The other way is to look at self-sufficiency standards for percent of the federal poverty level. And so here we're looking at the state of Colorado and their counties. And they're looking at 2 parents, an infant, and a preschooler as percent of the federal poverty level. This is coming out of their kids count, the Colorado's kids count data, and looking at that percentage. So what I did is I did this for Bexar County as an example in 2021 from the data that we pulled. The federal poverty level for a 4-person household right now is 26,500. For 2 adults, 1 infant, 1 preschool, from the Self-Sufficiency standard data, 67,201 is that reports, right? So 254% difference compared to what that federal poverty level is. So then what I did is I went through and calculated that for every single county in the state of Texas to see where that percent of the federal poverty level is higher and lower, right? Around Austin, Houston, and Dallas, as you'd expect, we do have a county over here that's above 265%. Bexar County, if we zoom in here, right, is at 253, 254%, that's rounding up, and then how that compares to our surrounding counties, right? And so a way to take that data and be able to create some output from it pretty quickly. So with that, if you have any questions on the self-sufficiency standard, please put that in the chat. With just a minute here, I want to go ahead and move on and just quick do a demo of the Census 2020 data. So actually, El Paso Times put out a pretty good tool to take a look at that data that was just published. Let's go ahead and do a demo of that real quick. Here we go. So at data.elpasotimes.com/census, that link is also in the PDF, which we'll share. You can go in, and then it does this for the entire country. So let's go ahead and put in Bexar County here. And there's a lot of different geographies you can put in. It does pre-populate as you're typing. So if I put in Bexar County, what we're doing now is it looks at the 2020 results from this recent census, compares it to the last decennial census in 2010, and then the amount of change, right? So population by race, ethnicity for Bexar County between 2010 and 2020 for white non-Hispanic down 26.4%, right? And we can see the increase in populations for race, ethnicity, things like total housing units going up. One kind of hot topic from this census, if you've been reading up on it all, is just the increase in the 2 or more races category here in Bexar County. That's gone up 779%. There's a lot of figuring out why those numbers or what's driving those numbers. So it's kind of this is a good way to go through and explore that across the country and just see what those how that's affecting in different areas and how those numbers have changed. They do supply a diversity index, population by race ethnicity for 18 years and older for adult populations. They do some information on the 2020 population and group quarters. And down here on the bottom, they supply a map based on which geography you've entered. And you can zoom in. Here we're looking at total population change in the city of San Antonio down to the census tract, right? And you can kind of see how those populations have changed in different areas of the county. Right, and then you can also change this, right, to see how different. It does zoom me back up to the top. So here, Hispanic population change. It redraws the map. There we go. And as we zoom in, right, we can see different areas here as well. You can also change the geography over here between city and town and tracts. And then just the last part down here on the bottom, they do a full breakdown of all the geographies that are associated with the geography you're looking at. So here we're looking at Bexar County. They do give you the numbers for Texas, and then every census tract, right? So it's just a lot of data here at the bottom that goes down quite a ways. And then for your different total population, age 18 and over. So that's it. I just wanted to quick show that as well. Again, if you have any questions on that, please put them in the chat. And then we'll move over to a Q&A on this as well.
All right, well, thank you to all of our wonderful presenters. While the Q&A is being set up, I would like to ask you all to answer a couple questions regarding your experience. These polls are anonymous and are used to help continue improving the show and shares. You guys should see those pop up on your screens in a moment. Good. Thank y'all for answering those questions for us. Now it's time for y'all's questions. I'm going to hand it over to my colleague, Christina Martinez, to read your questions that you've been posting.
Thank you, Daniqua, and thanks again to our presenters. So we had a few questions come up in the chat, but I'd like to make an announcement first that Ginger put in there. She just wanted to add a quick plug for an upcoming opportunity to grow your data skills. The Alamo Regional Data Alliance Geekdom and VACO, V-A-C-O, I'm not sure how that's pronounced. They're hosting a free event on October 26th on data literacy, strategy, and governance at the Geekdom Event Center. Join the ARDA mailing list at www.alamodata.org to receive information about it and upcoming training opportunities. So the first question we had in the chat was for Golare, and she already answered it, but I'll just read it so that everyone can know what's up. So does Metro, so this is for the Policymap, does SA Metro use the login subscriber version? If so, what are the bigger benefits to using the paid version in your work? So Golare already answered this. She says we do not have the login or subscriber version because we do a lot of our own advanced mapping with GIS and have a lot of local level HIPAA data that is not available publicly on Policymap. We have used Policymap when we want to really explore what's out there and what level it's available at for the sources of data we don't routinely use, like the business example I gave, or let's say HUD data. Okay, and looks like there are some more questions coming in, but there's another question for Jade for the College Success Dashboard. It's from Daniqua. When it says 37% of Asian students graduated from a four-year institution, who is included in students? Is it of Asian students in their senior year at a four-year institution, or is it of all Asian students at a four-year institution, regardless of freshman, sophomore, etc.?
Yeah, I just this question. So, and I did post our technical definition just now. So this rate is calculated as the total number of completers within 150% of normal time. And then it's divided by the revised adjusted cohort. What's not included in this calculation is the part-time student graduation rates. Only full-time, first-time degrees/certificate seeking undergraduate students who stay enrolled at their same home institution are included. We pull that directly from the THECB website. So it's a bit, I mean, I guess it's a bit complicated. We don't have any additional information beyond that, but I have actually, now that I'm thinking about it, I have submitted like an AAQ to them a couple times about how they calculate things. So hopefully if we hear back from them, we can update that definition and add it to our website.
Thank you.
Thanks for that response, Jade. So we have another question by Lawrence Coffey. It seems like this is a general question. What is the biggest obstacle you see Bexar County facing that we are not using data yet appropriately to tackle?
So I can start with a simple answer for that. I'm from the public health world, so I'm always preoccupied with getting, public health data or getting data that, is a means to an end to our public health questions. And one thing we're really struggling with, and I'm sure this is not going to come to a surprise, mental health data. Think about what a big deal this is right now, how much we've been talking about it in the wake of the pandemic. We hear a lot of anecdotal things about suicide rates going up and mental health really suffering. But from the public health world, we really don't have good sources of systematic or representative mental health data. So that would be my wish list in terms of, public health and what we could hopefully have better data collected to address.
Thank you, Golare. Anyone else? Would any of the other presenters like to take a stab at that question?
I know one thing that we usually run into it's been a hard thing to try to tackle for a while has been around using education data, because a lot of the education data that you can get is really coming from education around the school itself. So it's really based on the location, and it doesn't really tell you a lot about from some of the education data what's happening in neighborhoods where students live, right? And so there's a lot of reasons why that data is pretty protected, but I think there's a lot of answers that we could get from being able to have that same information that we're getting at the school level for the building, right? And then being able to spread that out into looking at, well, how is this affecting in the neighborhoods where children live? So that's always questions that we look to answer, and often hard to find data around that, right?
Yeah, that's something that we're seeing as well, is that something that's tricky with education data is that if you're trying to look at, cradle to career all the way through on that pathway, all the different data sources that are publicly available are on different sort of update schedules, and there's not a clear, explanation of like what those different schedules are and why, or if there's ways to even request that information, like how you would go about asking it. Sometimes it seems like it's almost intentionally complicated because it is so inaccessible. I mean, even if you go to the TEA website, it's not super user friendly to get the advanced data from that taper report. And once you do, it's super math. So you have to do all this sort of like decoding to figure out like even what the headers are saying. So that's something that we're finding, is that like education data as a whole is not equitable or accessible. And then trying to do it in a way that's trying to get it in a frequent schedule that's more as close to real time as you can get, even just at an aggregate level, is a pretty big lift. And then once you start to get into the ISDs, what we're seeing when we get those student level data from all the partners that we have sharing agreements with is that they all have, they all have different systems. They're all using different types of platforms. They have different definitions. There are state requirements for them to report to the TEA, but how they do that on their end is different. And so you even see inequity within the school districts as far as like even the data resources they have available. So, you may see one school district has an entire division dedicated to data, and another school district has one person that kind of wears multiple hats and does several things. So it's just not, it goes beyond just like the accessibility. I mean, you can see the inequity all the way down into actually how business operations work. And so trying to figure out like, how can we as UP also create like supports to do that, to be able to help build capacity, to be able to more centralize and standardize how we're doing reporting and getting data, even if it's within our geographic footprint that we can control or have control over. It's just, there's so many components of it that are difficult to do. And then also just to go off of Laura's question in the chat real quick, we do have plans to add county as far as a comparison line. The thing that's tricky about that is that the TEA doesn't offer that as an option. So we have to calculate that ourselves. And so we've just been trying to make sure that we're including the right schools in that universe, because we don't have a clear list that just says these are the ones that the TEA would be using. So we're going through their directory, and then we'll have to pull each of those ISDs ourselves to do that. So that's just something that we really haven't had, I guess, the bandwidth to do. But now that we have a larger team, we're able to start adding those sort of wish list items on top of these already publicly accessible dashboards that we're doing.
Okay, thank you for your thoughts on that, on that question, and for answering Laura's question, Jade, so I don't have to read it. But I'll read it anyway, just in case. It was, any plans to make the dashboard available at county level? And Jade just answered that question. So we have one more question for Policymap. It's, does Policymap have any export functions like PDF or maps?
Okay, so I guess I'm the designated Policymap person. So, okay, so again, I apologize because I've never used it to export and download data, but on the legacy site, at the top, there are options for print, download, share, and save. The thing is, when you click on it, it says available to basic free users and subscribers only, log in to access. So that does seem to be a feature of Policymap. There's a lot of logging in and signing up requirements, and you have to sort of go down those rabbit holes to see whether login means simply being able to use the free basic, which it does say it is, or versus you actually have to get a subscription version. I like snipping things. I always snip things when I want to save it as a picture or a PDF. I use my snipping tool a lot of the time when I want to do away with something where I need the pretty map. But yes, it does have all of those options at the top, theoretically.
Thank you. So we have about 4 minutes left. I did have one quick question for Jade. I was just curious, do you all keep track or like have an idea of who's using the dashboard? And how often do you think that students or parents use the information to advocate for themselves?
That's a good question. Short answer, no. But it is something that we're aware of because in the past year, we have the new website, and that was something that we thought through Tableau itself, we could just sort of track the interactions. But what we've done was that was a little bit misleading because if you have, 100 views, maybe 50 of those were us, because when we publish it, we're testing it to look at it. And it doesn't, and so we can see the IP addresses. So we started to record our own IP addresses so we can remove those from the list and then see like who are the people that are not us. But it's something that we have brought to our like web developers' attention so they could add more of a more detailed sort of tracker for us so we could actually see maybe more accurate sort of interactions. And that's for all of our sort of dashboard things. Those are just things that we didn't think of until honestly, like the end of last year. We're like, who's actually like, are we the ones that are using this? Or it's hard to tell. So now we are going to be able to start tracking that. And we're going to be way more we want to be able to be more intentional with how we're developing it based off of, or developing these products based off of the user interaction and engagement. And find ways to get feedback from the community on how we can make the user experience better, or add different data points that the community would find useful. So yes, that is something that's on our radar, but we don't have historically what that information looks like.
Okay, thank you. So that seems to be all the questions that we have. Does
Can
anybody?
I add something on that note? Actually, so this is just, thinking out loud. When I think about things like ARDA and these, digital data show and shares, or basically any sort of support focus groups for data people to get together, I also think quickly these conversations are going to turn technical, which is great. And one thing that Jade just brought up is, in the future, if it's possible and if it's kosher, we can talk about your different organizations' experience with getting paid models for the things we use. So Jade brought up Tableau, and we've been in talks with them, and they quoted us something like $100,000 for models where you could, I saw everybody's eyes widen. And they said, everybody is using it, all the organizations, if you want to track how many people are coming on your website, et cetera. So even if there's a space somewhere to talk about the software we use, and just like I even brought up about Policymap, right? The login, subscribe, and everything, where some of these things are more technical, and we can dedicate some time to navigate these things, or have a show and share about certain tools that you do have a paid model for. So let's say if a partnership, I'm not sure if that's allowed or if there's any like issues with confidentiality about that. I don't think so, but I do think it's going to be interesting as a lot of, people are from organizations or thinking about, getting software and using it for a more advanced feature, to get sort of a support group, almost like a review, when you go to a review of something and you see whether other people, what they have to say about it. So since Jade brought that up, I think it's interesting to think about that as a future topic, even as part of a show and share. For navigating tools that you pay for, and what your experience has been, and whether they quoted you $100,000 a year for a product. Sideline, sorry.
Yeah, no, that's actually a good point too. And I think another thing that could be a part of that discussion too is just so you get quoted something, but are there other options out there for licensing, either through that same software? If you have 501c3 status, you can usually get nonprofit licensing, or if through educational licensing, or if there's some open source version of something, right, that you can then go and have a free version of that. And then maybe somebody has some experience around that, saying, well, we use the open source version, we know the paid version, here are kind of some of the differences of what you can and can't do through those. So just to make kind of those tools aware, people aware of those tools and other options that might be out there if something's cost prohibitive. I would also say that if there's any ideas for future show and shares, please email us directly, or if you're on right now, go ahead and put it in the chat as well so we can record that, and then that'll give us some ideas for what we do next in these.
All right. If there's no more questions or any other last thoughts, then I want to thank you all for being here with us, for joining us for this session. We encourage you to explore these tools, to send us new data resources. We hope to see you guys at future events. It was great to see everyone. Have a great day.
Thank you.
Thank y'all.
Thank you.
Bye.